Rain lashed against the windshield of the $10 million Maybach, blurring the lights of the city into streaks of cold grey. Inside, Lucas Montgomery, the ruthless CEO of Montgomery Holdings, thought his night couldn't get worse. He was wrong. He was stranded in the middle of nowhere, minutes away from losing his empire. Then, a knock on the window changed everything. It wasn't a mechanic. It was a waitress in a grease-stained apron. He laughed at her offer to help. But when she leaned over the engine, the lightning flashed, illuminating something hanging from her neck that made his blood run cold. A pendant. The pendant. The one that was supposed to be buried 6 feet under 20 years ago. This isn't just a story about a broken car. It is a story about a broken family, a stolen legacy, and a secret that would burn the Montgomery dynasty to the ground. The rain in Seattle didn't just fall, it punished. It hammered against the asphalt of Route 9 like 1,000 tiny fists, turning the roadside into a slick, muddy trap. Sonia Palmer wiped her hands on a rag that was already more oil than cotton. The neon sign of "The Rusty Anchor" flickered above her, buzzing like an angry hornet. It was 11:45 p.m. Her shift had ended 15 minutes ago, but the diner owner, a man named Henderson with a heart 2 sizes too small, had made her scrub the grill twice. "You missed a spot, Palmer," Henderson had sneered, chewing on a toothpick. "You want that overtime pay? You earn it." Sonia hadn't argued. She couldn't afford to, with her father's medical bills from the hospice care still piling up even 6 months after his funeral. Every dollar was a lifeline. She pulled her coat tighter, stepping out into the deluge. Her 2005 Honda Civic was parked around the back, but as she rounded the corner of the building, she saw it. A beast of a machine. A Maybach Excelero, sleek and black, looking like a shark stranded on a beach. It was parked on the shoulder of the road, just past the diner's exit, hazards flashing rhythmically against the storm. Smoke, thick and white, was billowing from under the hood, instantly snatched away by the wind. Sonia hesitated. She was tired. Her bones ached. She smelled like old fryer grease and stale coffee. The last thing she wanted was to play Good Samaritan to someone who probably spent more on their tires than she made in a year. But then she remembered her father, Arthur. "We don't leave people stranded, Sonia. Not when we have the tools to help." She sighed, a puff of white breath in the cold air, and walked toward the luxury car. Inside the Maybach, Lucas Montgomery slammed his hand against the steering wheel. The leather groaned under his grip. "Damn it!" he roared, the sound confined within the soundproofed cabin. He checked his Rolex. 11:50 p.m. The emergency board meeting was at midnight. If he wasn't there to sign the merger papers with the Kensington Group, his stepmother, Catherine Montgomery, would have the leverage she needed to vote him out as CEO. It was a coup, plain and simple, and this car, this customized, over-engineered piece of German perfection, had chosen tonight to fail him. He grabbed his phone. No signal. The storm had knocked out the local tower, or perhaps the universe was just conspiring against him. He was 5 miles from the nearest town, stranded in a dead zone. A knock on the glass made him jump. He looked up to see a figure standing in the rain. A woman. She wore a faded diner uniform under a cheap, oversized coat. Her hair was plastered to her forehead. Lucas lowered the window an inch, letting the freezing rain hiss into the warm cabin. "You okay in there?" Sonia shouted over the wind. "Do I look okay?" Lucas snapped, his stress overriding his manners. "The car is dead. I have a meeting in 10 minutes that determines the fate of 5,000 employees, and I am stuck in a swamp." Sonia ignored his tone. She'd dealt with worse customers at the diner. "Pop the hood." Lucas blinked. "Excuse me?" "The smoke," she pointed. "It's white, sweet-smelling. Probably a coolant leak or a blown hose. If it's just a hose, I might have some duct tape and water in my trunk. It'll get you to the city." Lucas looked at her with incredulity. "Miss, this is a Maybach. It has a V12 twin-turbo engine. You don't just fix it with duct tape. This isn't a tractor." Sonia's eyes narrowed. The rain dripped from her nose. "Listen, Soot, you can sit there and wait for a tow truck that isn't coming because the reception is down. Or you can let the daughter of the best mechanic in King County take a look. Your choice." Lucas stared at her. The clock on the dashboard ticked to 11:52 p.m. He was desperate. "Fine," he muttered, pulling the latch. "Don't blame me if you burn your hands." Sonia didn't wait for him to get out. She moved to the front of the vehicle, heaving the heavy hood open. The heat hit her face, a welcome relief from the biting cold. She pulled a small flashlight from her keychain, a habit her dad had instilled in her, and shined it into the complex maze of the engine bay. Lucas stepped out of the car, holding a Burberry umbrella that cost more than Sonia's rent. He hovered over her shoulder, trying to keep his Italian loafers out of the mud. "Well?" he asked impatiently. "Hold the light," Sonia commanded, shoving the flashlight into his free hand. Lucas was so taken aback, he obeyed without thinking. He watched as she reached into the engine block. Her hands were slender but rough, scarred with small nicks and burns. She didn't flinch at the heat. She maneuvered around the hot metal with a familiarity that surprised him. "See this?" Sonia pointed to a thick black tube. "It's the upper radiator hose." The clamp snapped. "It's spewing coolant onto the exhaust manifold. That's your smoke." "Can you fix it?" Lucas asked, his voice losing some of its edge. "I can jury-rig it," she said. She ran back to her Honda, returning moments later with a roll of industrial tape, a gallon of water, and a pair of pliers. Lucas watched in silence as she worked. There was a grace to her movements, a competence that was undeniable. She wasn't just guessing. She knew exactly how much pressure to apply, how to twist the makeshift seal so it would hold against the pressure. "You're not just a waitress," Lucas observed, almost to himself. "I'm whatever pays the bills," Sonia grunted, leaning deep into the engine bay to tighten the hose. "My dad owned a shop, Palmer's Auto. I grew up under hoods like this. Though, usually with fewer zeros on the price tag." She exerted force, twisting the pliers. As she did, her coat fell open slightly. She was wearing a simple white blouse underneath, the top button undone due to the heat of the engine. "Okay," she breathed out, wiping sweat from her forehead with her forearm. "That should hold for at least 20 miles, but keep the RPMs low." She stood up, and as she did, a flash of lightning illuminated the sky, turning the night into day for a split second. Lucas was staring at her, about to thank her, when his eyes dropped to her neck. Hanging from a simple, tarnished silver chain was a pendant. It was heavy, made of platinum, shaped like a falcon clutching a rose in its talons. In the center of the rose sat a sapphire so dark it looked almost black, but under the lightning it flashed a brilliant, unmistakable deep blue. Lucas stopped breathing. The umbrella slipped from his hand, tumbling into the mud. "What?" Lucas choked out, his voice barely a whisper. Sonia looked at him, confused. She wiped her hands on her rag. "What? Did I get grease on your shirt?" I tried to be careful. Lucas ignored her. He took a step closer, his eyes locked on the jewelry. He reached out, his hand trembling, before stopping himself inches from her chest. "That pendant. Where did you get it?" Sonia instinctively reached up and tucked the necklace back under her blouse. She felt a sudden spike of fear. Was he accusing her of stealing? "It was my mother's," Sonia said defensively, stepping back toward her car. "She died when I was a baby. My dad gave it to me." "Your father," Lucas repeated, his mind racing. "Arthur Palmer." "Yes. Look, mister, I fixed your car. You don't need to pay me. Just have a good night." Sonia felt the shift in the air. The arrogance in the man was gone, replaced by a predatory intensity that terrified her. She turned and practically ran to her Civic. "Wait!" Lucas shouted, stepping into the rain without his umbrella. "Wait! I just want to know—" But Sonia had already slammed her door. The Civic's engine sputtered to life, and she peeled out of the parking lot, spraying mud onto the pristine bumper of the Maybach. Lucas stood in the pouring rain, soaked to the bone, watching her taillights disappear. He didn't care about the meeting anymore. He didn't care about the merger. He knew that crest, the falcon and the rose. It was the custom seal of the Montgomery family, specifically commissioned for one person, his aunt, Vivian Montgomery. Vivian, who had disappeared 22 years ago. Vivian, who was presumed dead, along with her infant daughter. Vivian, whose death had transferred the entirety of the family trust to Lucas's stepmother, Catherine. Lucas reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. The signal had returned, a single bar. He didn't call the board. He dialed a number he hadn't used in years. "Benson," Lucas said, his voice steel. "Forget the meeting. I need you to find someone. A waitress at a roadside diner on Route 9. Her name is Palmer. I want to know everything. And Benson, do not tell Catherine." 2 days later, the sun was shining in Seattle, a deceptive brightness that hid the rot beneath the city's surface. Sonia was back at the Rusty Anchor, balancing 3 plates of Eggs Benedict on one arm. The morning rush was brutal. The incident with the rich man and the Maybach felt like a fever dream. She had told herself he was just a crazy eccentric. Rich people were weird about jewelry. "Sonia, table 4 needs coffee," Henderson yelled from the kitchen. Sonia sighed and grabbed the pot. She walked over to table 4, a booth in the back corner. Sitting there was not a trucker or a local regular. It was a man in a charcoal suit that looked like it was tailored by lasers. He was older, perhaps in his 50s, with silver hair and a face made of granite. It wasn't the man from the road. "Coffee?" Sonia asked, holding the pot. "Sonia Palmer?" the man asked. His voice was polite, but carried an undertone of authority. "Who's asking?" "My name is Benson. I represent Mr. Lucas Montgomery." Sonia froze. The coffee pot trembled in her hand. "The guy with the car. Look, if the hose popped off, that's not my fault. I told him it was a temporary fix." Benson allowed a rare, small smile to touch his lips. "The car is running perfectly, Miss Palmer. Mr. Montgomery was actually quite impressed. He made the meeting on time." "Okay, so why are you here?" Benson reached into his briefcase and pulled out a cream-colored envelope. He slid it across the sticky table. "Mr. Montgomery believes talent is being wasted here. He is looking for a personal mechanic for his private fleet. The pay is substantial." Sonia laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "A personal mechanic? For a billionaire?" "I fix Toyotas, mister. I don't touch Ferraris." "Mr. Montgomery insists. He says you have an intuitive touch. He is offering a salary of $100,000 a year, plus full benefits, including medical." The world seemed to stop spinning. The noise of the diner, the clattering plates, the sizzling bacon, the low hum of conversation, faded into a dull roar. Medical. Sonia thought of the debt collectors calling her phone 3 times a day. She thought of the final notice on her apartment door. She thought of her father, Arthur, who had died working himself to the bone to pay for her schooling, only for her to drop out to care for him. Why? Sonia asked, suspicion warring with hope. Why me? Because you stopped, Benson said simply. And because you were honest. Mr. Montgomery values those traits above all else. It was a lie, or at least a partial truth. Benson knew the real reason. He had seen the security footage from the car's dashcam. He had seen the pendant. But he also knew that if he told this girl the truth, that she was likely walking into a snake pit of family secrets, she would run. Sonia looked at the envelope. She looked at Henderson, who was currently screaming at the dishwasher. "When do I start?" she asked. "Immediately," Benson said. "The car is outside." The Montgomery estate was not a house, it was a fortress. Located on Mercer Island, it was a sprawling compound of glass and steel overlooking the water. Sonia sat in the back of Benson's sedan, clutching her small canvas bag. She felt small. She felt like an imposter. When they arrived, Lucas was waiting in the driveway. He wasn't wearing a suit today. He wore dark jeans and a cashmere sweater, looking more like a model than a CEO. But his eyes were sharp, calculating. "Ms. Palmer," Lucas said, extending a hand as she climbed out. "Glad you accepted." "Sonia," she corrected him, her grip firm. "And I accepted because the money is insane. If this is some kind of joke, I have a tire iron in my bag." Lucas chuckled. "No joke. Come, I want to show you the garage." He led her through the house. It was cold, sterile. Beautiful art hung on the walls, but it felt like a museum, not a home. As they walked, they passed a large portrait hanging in the hallway. It depicted a stern-looking man, a beautiful, sharp-eyed woman standing behind him, and 2 children, a boy who looked like a young Lucas, and a girl. Sonia stopped. She stared at the woman in the painting. The woman was wearing a necklace. It was small in the painting, but the detail was clear. A falcon and a rose. Lucas stopped and turned, watching her reaction closely. "Who is that?" Sonia asked, pointing at the woman. "That is my father, Richard," Lucas said slowly. "And my aunt, Vivian." "She's wearing—" Sonia's hand went to her own neck, her fingers brushing the outline of the pendant under her shirt. "Yes," Lucas pressed, stepping closer. "What is she wearing, Sonia?" Before she could answer, a voice cut through the air like a cracking whip. "Lucas! I wasn't aware we had guests." Sonia turned. Descending the grand staircase was a woman who looked like she had stopped aging at 50 through sheer willpower and surgery. She wore a silk robe and diamonds at 2 p.m. Her eyes were green, cold, and predatory. "Catherine," Lucas said, his jaw tightening. "This is Sonia, our new fleet manager." Catherine Montgomery reached the bottom of the stairs. She didn't look at Sonia's face. She didn't look at her shoes. She looked straight at Sonia's neck. Even hidden under the fabric, the heavy platinum chain created a distinct line. Catherine's eyes narrowed. She smelled blood. "Fleet manager?" Catherine purred, walking a circle around Sonia. "She looks rather fragile for manual labor." "Where did you find her, Lucas?" "The gutter?" "I found her fixing the mistake your mechanics made on the Maybach," Lucas retorted. Catherine stopped in front of Sonia. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Welcome to Montgomery Hall, dear. Do be careful. This house has a way of chewing up little things and spitting them out." Sonia felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. She looked from Lucas to Catherine. She realized then that this wasn't about cars. She didn't know what it was about yet, but she knew one thing Arthur Palmer had taught her. When the engine makes a noise you don't recognize, you don't ignore it. You find the source before it blows up. "I can handle myself," Sonia said, meeting Catherine's gaze. Catherine's smile vanished. "We shall see." As Catherine walked away, Lucas leaned in close to Sonia. "Stay away from her," he whispered. "And for God's sake, keep that necklace hidden." Sonia looked at him, confused and frightened. "Why? What is going on?" "I'm not sure yet," Lucas said, looking at the portrait of the aunt who had been dead for 20 years. "But I think you just walked into the middle of a war." The garage at the Montgomery estate was larger than the entire apartment building Sonia had grown up in. It was a pristine, climate-controlled cathedral of automotive excellence. The floors were polished epoxy, the walls lined with tools that looked like they belonged in a surgical theater. Sonia spent her first 3 days in a state of high-functioning anxiety. She kept her head down, focusing on the fleet. She tuned the engines of the Range Rovers used by security. She detailed the vintage Jaguar E-Type, and she avoided the main house as if it were radioactive. But she couldn't avoid the feeling of being watched. Every time she looked up at the security cameras buzzing in the corners, she felt Catherine Montgomery's cold green eyes staring back. It was late on a Thursday evening. The rain had returned to Seattle, drumming a rhythmic beat on the high skylights. Sonia was under the hood of the Maybach again, double-checking her roadside repair with proper OEM parts. "You work too hard." Sonia jumped, banging her head lightly on the hood strut. She turned to see Lucas standing there. He had discarded the CEO armor. He wore a t-shirt and grease-stained jeans, holding 2 beers. "Jesus, you scared me," she exhaled, rubbing her temple. "Sorry," Lucas said, offering her a bottle. "Peace offering. I know my stepmother hasn't been welcoming." Sonia took the beer. "She called me a gutter rat. I've been called worse by drunk truckers, but she manages to make it sound like a medical diagnosis." Lucas laughed, but the sound was hollow. He leaned against the workbench. "Catherine hates anything she can't control. And she can't control you because you don't want anything from her. That makes you dangerous." He took a sip of his drink, his eyes shifting from her face to her neck. The pendant was tucked inside her coveralls, hidden. "Sonia," he said, his voice dropping an octave. "We need to talk about the necklace." Sonia stiffened. "I told you, it was my mother's. My dad gave it to me." "I know what you said," Lucas replied gently, "but I need you to show it to me. Please. It's important. More important than you realize." There was a vulnerability in his eyes that disarmed her. This wasn't the arrogance of a billionaire. It was the desperation of a man looking for a ghost. Slowly, Sonia reached into her collar and pulled out the heavy platinum chain. The falcon and the rose swung in the air between them. Lucas set his beer down. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a jeweler's loop. "May I?" Sonia nodded, holding her breath. Lucas stepped close. He didn't touch her skin, but the heat radiating from him was palpable. He held the pendant steady, peering through the loop at the back of the falcon's wing. "I knew it," he whispered. "The artisan who made this. He had a signature, a microscopic engraving." "What does it say?" Sonia asked. "It's not text," Lucas said, lowering the loop. "It's a mechanism." He took the pendant in his fingers. He pressed the sapphire rose and simultaneously twisted the falcon's head to the right. It was a movement so specific, so precise, no one would ever do it by accident. Click. The solid platinum body of the falcon split open. Sonia gasped. I've worn this for 20 years. I never knew it opened." Inside the tiny cavity was not a picture, but a small, folded piece of translucent paper and a tiny, intricate silver key. Lucas used a pair of tweezers from the workbench to extract the paper. He unfolded it with agonizing slowness, It was a note written in microscopic, elegant handwriting. Lucas read it aloud, his voice trembling. To my little star. If you are reading this, I am gone. Trust no one in the house. The key opens the safe at the boathouse. The truth is inside. Viva. Lucas looked at Sonia, his eyes watering. Vivian. My aunt. Sonia felt the room spin. Wait, you're saying, my mother was your aunt? That makes me, my cousin, Lucas finished, and the rightful heir to the Montgomery fortune. He looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the family resemblance he had missed before, the shape of the jaw, the determination in the eyes. But if you're the heir, Sonia stammered, backing away, then Catherine loses everything, Lucas said, his face hardening into a mask of fury. The company, the house, the power, the trust fund requires the heir to be declared dead or missing for 25 years before ownership fully transfers. You appeared 3 years before the deadline. The implications hit Sonia like a physical blow. That's why she hates me. She suspects. She doesn't just suspect, Lucas said, gripping her shoulders. If she finds out about this note, she will kill you. Sonia, you aren't safe here. Suddenly, the lights in the garage flickered and died. The heavy electronic doors slammed shut, the locking bolts engaging with a loud thud. Power surge? Sonia whispered. No, Lucas said, pulling her behind the bulk of the Maybach. That wasn't a surge, that was a lockdown. The lockdown had been a system error, or so the head of security, a man named Victor, with eyes like a dead fish, had claimed. Lucas didn't buy it. He moved Sonia out of the staff quarters and into a guest suite in the East Wing, right next to his own. He hired a private security detail, bypassing Victor entirely. For a week, the house was a cold war zone. Catherine was silent, which was worse than her shouting. Then came the invitation, the annual Montgomery Foundation Gala, the event of the season. Senators, tech moguls, and foreign dignitaries would be descending on the estate. She wants you there, Lucas told Sonia as he tossed a garment bag onto her bed. Why? Sonia asked, looking at the dress. It was a stunning, floor-length gown in midnight blue, the exact color of the sapphire in her pendant. I'm the mechanic. She says she wants to welcome the staff properly, Lucas scoffed. It's a trap. She's going to try to humiliate you, make you look out of place, break you publicly so that if you ever try to claim your identity, no one will believe you. Then I won't go. You have to, Lucas said. We need to get to the boathouse. It's on the edge of the property. During the gala, security will be focused on the main ballroom. It's our only chance to use that key. The plan was set. Sonia would attend, play the part of the fish out of water, and slip away during the speeches. The night of the gala, the estate was transformed. Fairy lights draped every tree. A live orchestra played on the terrace. Champagne flowed like water. Sonia descended the stairs. She had done her own makeup, keeping it simple. When she stepped into the light, the room seemed to quiet down. She didn't look like a mechanic. She looked regal. The midnight blue dress hugged her frame, and she wore the pendant openly now, a challenge resting against her collarbone. Catherine was waiting at the bottom of the stairs, holding a flute of champagne. She wore crimson, looking like a queen soaked in blood. Charming, Catherine said, her voice dripping with venom. You clean up well, dear. Though I suppose anyone can look the part with Lucas's credit card. I bought the shoes myself, Sonia lied smoothly. Walmart. On sale. Catherine's lip curled. She leaned in. Enjoy the night, Sonia. It will be your last one under a roof. Sonia walked past her, her heart hammering against her ribs. She found Lucas near the bar. He looked dashing in a tuxedo, but his eyes were scanning the room for threats. "You look—" Lucas started, then stopped. "You look like her. Vivian. Is that a good thing? It's a dangerous thing. Ready?" "Ready." They mingled for an hour, playing the part. Sonia felt the eyes of the elite on her. They whispered, "Who is she? Is she Lucas's new fling?" Then the music stopped. Catherine tapped a spoon against her glass, standing on the small stage. "Ladies and gentlemen," Catherine announced, her voice amplified by the microphone. "Thank you all for coming. Tonight is about legacy, about protecting what is ours." Lucas grabbed Sonia's hand. "Now, go." Sonia slipped into the crowd, moving toward the side exit that led to the gardens. She moved quickly, the heavy fabric of her dress swishing around her legs. She made it to the terrace doors. "Stop right there!" The voice boomed over the speakers. It wasn't Catherine, it was Victor, the security chief. The music cut out completely. The spotlight swung from the stage, sweeping across the room until it pinned Sonia against the glass doors like a moth. 2 security guards grabbed her arms. "Let me go!" Sonia shouted, struggling. Lucas was running toward her, but Victor stepped in his path. "I'm sorry, Mr. Montgomery," Victor said loud enough for the room to hear. "But we caught her red-handed." Catherine stepped forward, a look of mock sorrow on her face. "Oh, Sonia. After everything we did for you?" "What are you talking about?" Sonia cried. Victor held up a clear plastic bag. Inside was a diamond necklace, Catherine's famous emerald-cut choker, worth $500,000. "We found this in her room," Victor announced, "hidden in her tool bag." The crowd gasped. The whispers turned to scoffs of disgust. The help stealing from the hand that feeds them. "I didn't steal anything," Sonia yelled, looking at Lucas. "Lucas, you know I didn't." Catherine sighed, a theatrical, pitying sound. "It's a sickness, I suppose. Like father, like daughter." The room went silent. "What did you say?" Sonia asked, her voice trembling. Catherine smiled, a cruel, triumphant slash. "Oh, didn't Lucas tell you? We know who your father was. Arthur Palmer, the chauffeur, the man who drove my sister-in-law, Vivian, to the airport 20 years ago. The man who kidnapped her and her baby for ransom. The man who killed them when the money didn't come." The world dropped out from under Sonia's feet. "No, my dad. He was a good man." "He was a criminal," Catherine spat. "And you are just trash trying to finish the job. Arrest her." The guards began to drag Sonia away. Lucas stood frozen, his face pale. The accusation about Arthur. He hadn't known that part. Was it true? Sonia looked at Lucas, pleading with her eyes. Do something. But Lucas was looking at Catherine, seeing the smug satisfaction in her eyes. He realized the game. She wasn't arresting Sonia to put her in jail. She was handing her over to private security to remove her from the board permanently. Lucas grabbed a heavy crystal ice bucket from the bar. Crash! He smashed it onto the floor, the sound exploding like a gunshot. "Let her go!" Lucas roared. The command carried the full weight of the CEO, the Alpha, the Montgomery blood. "She is a thief, Lucas!" Catherine shrieked, losing her composure. "She is my guest!" Lucas walked over, shoving Victor aside with a force that sent the large man stumbling. He ripped Sonia from the guard's grip. "And if anyone touches her again, I will burn this house down with all of you inside." He looked at Sonia. "Run. The boathouse. Now." Chaos erupted. Guests screamed. Security moved in. Lucas threw a punch, catching a guard in the jaw. Sonia didn't look back. She kicked off her heels, hiked up her gown, and sprinted into the dark, rainy night. The rain was a torrent. Sonia ran barefoot through the mud, the gravel tearing at her feet. But she didn't feel the pain. Adrenaline was a drug, and she was overdosing on it. Kidnapper, Murderer. Catherine's words echoed in her skull. Lies, she told herself. My dad was kind. He cried during Disney movies. He saved stray cats. He didn't kill anyone. She reached the boathouse. It was a decaying wooden structure at the edge of the lake, overgrown with ivy. It looked abandoned. Sonia fumbled for the pendant. Her fingers were slippery with rain and mud. She extracted the tiny silver key. The door to the boathouse was padlocked, but the key wasn't for the door. She smashed a window with a rock and climbed in, cutting her arm on the glass. Inside, it smelled of rot and old gasoline. She used the flashlight on her phone. The key opens the safe at the boathouse. Where? She tore through the room. Overturned canoes, old life jackets, fishing nets. In the corner there was a heavy oak desk, covered in a dusty tarp. Sonia ripped the tarp away. The desk was locked. She tried the tiny key on the center drawer. It slid in perfectly. Click. She pulled the drawer open. Inside was a steel lockbox. The key fit that too. She opened the box. There was no money, no jewels, just a thick, leather-bound journal and a stack of cassette tapes. Sonia opened the journal to the first page. The handwriting matched the note in the pendant. September 12th, 2003. Catherine knows. She found out about the changes to Richard's will. She knows that if Richard dies, everything goes to me and the baby. I heard her on the phone last night. She's hiring someone to cut the brake lines on the rolls. Sonia flipped the pages, her hands shaking. October 4th, 2003. Richard is dead. Heart attack, the coroner said. Catherine paid him off. I saw the transfer. I'm next. I have to run. Arthur is the only one I trust. He loves me. He has always loved me, even though I married the wrong brother. We are leaving tonight. Sonia gasped. Arthur loves me. Her dad hadn't kidnapped Vivian. They were lovers. She flipped to the final entry. October 5th, 2003. We made it to the safe house, but her men are close. Victor is hunting us. I can't let them find the baby. Arthur is going to take her. He's going to raise her as his own. I will lead them away. If I die, my daughter lives. Her name is not Sonia. Her name is Eleanor Montgomery, and she is the queen of this empire. Tears streamed down Sonia's face, mixing with the rain. She wasn't just the mechanic's daughter. She was the product of a forbidden love that had saved her life. Arthur hadn't kidnapped her. He had saved her from slaughter. Found you. The voice came from the doorway. Sonia spun around. Victor stood there, his silhouette framed by the lightning. He held a silenced pistol in his hand. Catherine guessed you'd come here, Victor said, stepping into the room. She always hated this boathouse. Too many memories. You killed her, Sonia said, clutching the diary to her chest. You killed my mother. Vivienne was difficult, Victor shrugged, raising the gun. She drove her car off a cliff to avoid us. Very dramatic. But you're going to be much simpler. A tragic suicide. Distraught over being exposed as a thief, the poor girl drowned herself. Lucas knows, Sonia screamed. Lucas is currently being detained by 3 of my men in the ballroom. He can't help you. Victor cocked the gun. Goodbye, Miss Palmer. Vroom. A roar ripped through the wooden wall of the boathouse. Splinters exploded inward as the nose of the Maybach Excelero crashed through the rotting wood, debris flying everywhere. Victor turned, blinded by the high beams. The car didn't stop. It slammed into Victor, pinning him against the far wall with a sickening crunch. The gun skittered across the floor. The driver's door flew open. It wasn't Lucas. It was Benson, the elderly aide, looking calm and composed, despite having just driven a $10 million car through a building. Get in, Miss Sonia, Benson said, adjusting his glasses. Master Lucas insisted I keep an eye on you. I took the liberty of bringing the heavy artillery." Sonia grabbed the diary and the tapes. She looked at Victor, groaning in the wreckage. "Is he dead?" she asked. "He will wish he was," Benson said. "Get in. Lucas is waiting at the private hangar. We are leaving the country." "No," Sonia said, climbing into the passenger seat. Her fear was gone, replaced by a cold, hard rage. She looked at the journal in her hand. "We aren't leaving," Sonia said, her eyes flashing like the sapphire around her neck. "Take me back to the main house." Benson looked at her, surprised. "Miss?" "I have the proof, Benson. I have her handwriting. I have the tapes. I am not running away like my mother did." She slammed the door. "Drive the car, Benson. I'm going to fire my stepmother." The Maybach Exalero was a ruin of its former glory. The front grille was shattered, a jagged maw of chrome and carbon fiber. One headlight was smashed, leaving the car winking like a bruised prizefighter. Ivy from the boathouse wall trailed from the side mirror, whipping against the door in the wind. Inside, the silence was heavier than the storm outside. Benson drove with a calm precision that belied the fact that he had just committed vehicular assault. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel, but his breathing was steady. Sonia sat in the passenger seat, the leather diary pressing against her chest like a shield. Her heart was a frantic bird battering against her ribs. She looked at Benson, really seeing him for the first time. He wasn't just a butler. He was a soldier in a war she hadn't known was being fought. "You knew," Sonia said, her voice barely audible over the roar of the damaged engine. "You knew who I was the moment I walked into the house." Benson kept his eyes on the winding driveway that led back up the hill to the main estate. "I suspected, Miss Sonia. You have your mother's walk, the way she held her head high when she was afraid. But when I saw the pendant, I knew Arthur had kept his promise." "Why didn't you tell me?" Sonia demanded, anger flaring. "Why let me walk into Catherine's trap?" "Because I am an old man, and I was afraid," Benson admitted, a tear tracing a path down his wrinkled cheek. "Catherine has eyes everywhere. If I had spoken to you, she would have known. I had to wait until you found the truth yourself. I had to wait until the lockbox was opened. That was the fail-safe Vivian set up. And Lucas? Master Lucas is innocent in this," Benson said firmly. "He loved your mother, his aunt, dearly. He grew up believing his father died of a heart attack, and his aunt abandoned him. Catherine poisoned his mind against the world, but she could never poison his heart. He fought for you tonight." Sonia looked down at the cassette tapes in her lap. "Is it enough? A diary? Some old tapes? Catherine owns the police. She owns the judges." Benson turned the car onto the final stretch. The lights of the mansion blazed through the trees, a beacon of gold and malice. "The truth is a funny thing, Miss Sonia," Benson said, shifting gears. "It is like oil. You can try to push it down, drown it in water, bury it under the earth. But eventually, it always rises to the top. And tonight, we are not just bringing the truth. We are bringing the fire." Benson slammed on the brakes. The Maybach skidded to a halt right in front of the grand entrance, crushing a pristine bed of petunias. The valets, who were busy parking the limousines of senators and tech moguls, stared in horror. This wasn't a car, it was a wreck, and the woman stepping out of it wasn't a guest. Sonia kicked the door open. Her midnight blue gown was ripped at the hem. Her feet were bare, bleeding, and caked in mud. Her hair was a wild tangle of wet curls. She looked like a vengeful spirit risen from a swamp. "Stay here, Benson," she commanded. "I wouldn't miss this for the world," Benson replied, reaching into the glove compartment and pulling out a wireless microphone receiver connected to the ballroom sound system. You might need this." Sonia took the microphone. She gripped the diary in her other hand. She walked up the grand steps, the mud squelching between her toes. The security guards at the door, stunned by the sight of the battered Maybach and the sheer ferocity in her eyes, didn't dare stop her. She pushed open the heavy oak doors. The grand ballroom was a sea of black ties and designer silk. The air smelled of expensive perfume and hypocrisy. Catherine Montgomery stood on the stage, basking in the spotlight. She held a glass of champagne, her face flushed with the triumph of having just dispatched a thief and suppressed a rebellion. Lucas was nowhere to be seen, likely locked in a security office, neutralized. "And so," Catherine was saying, her voice smooth as velvet, "we look to the future. A future where Montgomery Holdings remains a pillar of stability, untouched by scandal, guided by strong leadership." Boom! The sound of the double doors slamming against the walls echoed like a cannon shot. 300 heads turned. The music died instantly. Sonia stood in the doorway. She was a stark, violent contrast to the perfection of the room. She was dirt and blood and rain. She walked forward, her bare feet leaving muddy footprints on the white marble floor. "Scandal?" Sonia's voice rang out, amplified by the microphone Benson had given her. "You want to talk about scandal, Catherine?" Catherine froze. Her glass slipped from her fingers and shattered on the stage. For the first time in 20 years, true fear flickered behind her eyes. "Security!" Catherine shrieked, her voice cracking. "Get this filth out of here! She's deranged!" 2 guards moved toward Sonia, but the crowd blocked them. The guests were paralyzed by curiosity. This was better than the opera. This was raw. "Don't touch me," Sonia warned the guards, not backing down. "Unless you want to be accomplices to murder." The word hung in the air. Murder. Sonia walked until she was in the center of the room, directly under the crystal chandelier. She looked up at Catherine on the stage. "Where is Lucas?" Sonia asked. "He is indisposed," Catherine spat, regaining some of her composure. "He is having a mental episode, just like you. You are a thief, Sonia. We found the necklace." "You planted the necklace," Sonia corrected. "Just like you planted the evidence against my father 20 years ago." She held up the leather-bound book. "Do you recognize this, Catherine?" Catherine went pale. She recognized it instantly. Vivian's diary. The one thing she had never been able to find. "That is stolen property," Catherine stammered. "This," Sonia said, turning to address the crowd, "is the diary of Vivian Montgomery, the rightful owner of this estate, the woman who supposedly died in a car accident." Sonia opened the book. Her hands were steady now. "September 12th, 2003, she read. "Catherine is poisoning Richard's tea. I found the digoxin pills in her vanity. She is doing it slowly, to mimic heart failure. She wants the company. She wants the power." A gasp rippled through the room. A senator in the front row looked at Catherine with horror. "Lies!" Catherine screamed. "She wrote that. The girl wrote it herself. It's a forgery." "Is it?" Sonia asked. She pulled the cassette tape from her pocket. She walked over to the AV booth at the side of the stage. The sound technician, a young man who looked terrified, didn't stop her as she shoved the tape into the vintage deck that was part of the system. She pressed play. The speakers crackled. Then a voice filled the room. A voice that many of the older guests remembered. Soft, elegant, but trembling with terror. "If anyone is listening to this, my name is Vivian. I am hiding in the boathouse. Catherine has sent Victor to cut the lines. I heard them planning it. She admitted to killing Richard. She said the weak must be cooled, so the strong can rule. She's going to kill me. Arthur is trying to save the baby. Please, if I die, tell the truth." The silence that followed was absolute. It was the silence of a tomb. Catherine stood on the stage, stripping of all her armor. She wasn't a CEO anymore. She was a murderer, exposed in high definition. "Turn it off!" she screeched, lunging for the sound system, but before she could move, a figure tackled her. It was Lucas. He had broken out of the security office, his shirt torn, a bruise blooming on his cheek. He held Catherine down, his face twisted in a mixture of grief and rage. "You killed him," Lucas choked out. "You killed my father." "I did it for us," Catherine yelled, struggling. "He was weak. He was going to sell the company. I saved the legacy." "You destroyed the legacy," Lucas roared. Sirens began to wail in the distance, growing louder by the second. Benson had timed the call perfectly. Sonia walked up the steps to the stage. She looked down at the woman who had haunted her family for 2 decades. "The legacy doesn't belong to you," Sonia said quietly. "My name is Eleanor Montgomery, and you are fired." The doors burst open again. This time it wasn't a muddy waitress. It was the Seattle Police Department, led by a detective who looked very interested in the confession that had just been broadcast to the city's elite. As they handcuffed Catherine and dragged her away, kicking and screaming curses at the mechanic's brat, Sonia felt the adrenaline leave her body. She swayed. The room spun. Lucas was there instantly, catching her before she hit the floor. "I've got you," he whispered, holding her tight. "I've got you, Elle." Sonia closed her eyes, letting the darkness take her. She didn't have to run anymore. 6 months later, the morning sun hit the glass facade of the Montgomery Tower in downtown Seattle, making the building gleam like a sword. In the executive office on the top floor, Sonia Palmer, now legally Sonia Eleanor Montgomery, stood looking out at the city. She wasn't wearing a mechanic's jumpsuit. She wore a tailored grey blazer and trousers, sharp and professional, but she still wore her steel-toed boots. Some habits were hard to break. The intercom buzzed. "Miss Montgomery? The board is ready for you." "Thank you, Jessica," Sonia replied. She turned to the large oak desk. It was covered in blueprints, not just for cars, but for the company's new direction: affordable, sustainable transport. The Arthur Initiative, she called it. Lucas was sitting on the couch in the corner, reviewing a legal brief. He looked younger, lighter. The weight of the world was off his shoulders. He was no longer the CEO. He had willingly stepped down to COO, preferring the operations side, while Sonia took the helm of the vision. "You ready?" Lucas asked, standing up. "Terrified," Sonia admitted. "I know how to fix a transmission. I don't know how to fix a 60-year-old corporate culture." "You fixed the Maybach with duct tape and a water bottle." Lucas smiled. "You'll figure this out. Besides, you have the vote. Catherine's shares were forfeited to you. You are the majority holder. It's not about the shares, Lucas. It's about trust." She touched the pendant around her neck. She had had it polished, but she kept the scratches on the back. A reminder. "By the way," Lucas said, opening the door for her, "I have a surprise for you downstairs, in the garage." Sonia raised an eyebrow. "If it's another broken exotic car, I'm charging you double labor." Lucas laughed. "Come and see." They took the private elevator down to the basement levels. When the doors opened, Sonia gasped. Sitting in the center of the bay was her old 2005 Honda Civic, but it wasn't the rusted, dented bucket she had driven for years. It had been completely restored. The paint was a deep, lustrous red. The engine bay was pristine, fitted with top-tier parts, but keeping the original heart of the car. And next to it sat the Maybach Excelero. It, too, was fully repaired, the scars of the boathouse incident gone, gleaming in black. "Why the Honda?" Sonia asked, running her hand over the hood of her old car. "Because that's the car that brought you to me," Lucas said softly. "And because it reminds us that value isn't about the price tag. It's about the reliability. It's about the heart." Sonia looked at the two cars side by side, the billionaire's chariot and the waitress's lifeline, both running perfectly. She thought of her father, Arthur. She thought of her mother, Vivian. She thought of the long, muddy road that had led her here. "Let's go," Sonia said, turning back to the elevator. "We have a company to run." Lucas nodded. "After you, boss." As the elevator doors closed, shielding them from the noise of the garage, Sonia smiled. The storm was over. The engine was humming. And for the first time in her life, she was exactly where she was supposed to be. What a ride. From a rainy night on Route 9 to the boardroom of a global empire, Sonia's journey proves that true nobility isn't found in bloodlines or bank accounts, but in courage, integrity, and the willingness to get your hands dirty. Catherine Montgomery thought she could bury the truth, but she forgot one thing. You can't break a mechanic who knows how to rebuild from scrap. Sonia didn't just fix a car that night. She fixed a broken family and reclaimed a stolen legacy. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the person serving your coffee might just be the queen in disguise. If you enjoyed this story of twists, justice, and redemption, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss a new story. Share this video with a friend who loves a good underdog victory. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.